This literally just happened to me, so I'm still a little freaked out. I frequently have nightmares in which demons and other evil entities either trap me or try to steal my life force from me or, on occasion, try to take my son from me. And there is always either imagery or just a general foreboding heavy sense of evil and malice. But this time it was different. I occasionally experience sleep paralysis, and I always feel like my body just isn't responding to my command. It's like something's pinning me down and holding my eyes closed. And it's just all around a very stressful feeling that's in the air. When I force my eyes open after what feels like hours, there's always a shadow in the shape of a man, like a silhouette, and I'm always facing it. I usually audibly say some sort of prayer and banish the entity from my room or something. This isn't an old house, and nobody has ever died here. I live in a dense city, so I don't know much about the paranormal or whatever kind of things happen here. So tonight the same thing happened, but I felt like something was sitting on my chest. I couldn't breathe, and I kept trying to roll over, but I just couldn't. It was like I was being watched, like it was trying to tell me something, but I was just so filled with this overwhelming sense of dread. Anyway, after consciously but mutely fighting it over and over, I finally got to the point where I could yell out, "Go!" Once I did that, I felt a release and regained control of my arms and legs, and I rolled over and opened my eyes. And just before I felt like I was capable of breathing again, like right before the pressure was fully released, I saw plain as day another shadow man. Except this one was different. He was entirely made of static, like the static you would see on an old TV screen. I know I did not imagine this. I've seen it a few times before, but this was the first time that it had ever touched me, inhibited me in any way. It was so dreadful, I hated it. I looked at this static silhouette for like a second and a half. Felt like forever. It was just standing at the foot of my bed, and I did what I always do when I see these things. I shouted as loudly and assertively as I could, "You are not welcome here. Leave this place now." And just like a television, it sort of flickered and turned bluish and then faded away. When it disappeared, the feeling of dread left with it. I know it probably sounds lame, but not being able to move and being conscious of some evil, shadowy, static man holding me down scares the shit out of me every time. This is the first time I've seen the static man in my room like this, though. The few times I've seen it before was not in my home, and in the past it's just been like a flicker of static, not a man or any sort of shape. This probably sounds so stupid, but I'm just so shook up. So I had this nightmare years back, and it's never left my head. I was living alone at the time in a one-bedroom apartment. In my dream, I first just walked into my apartment, and I saw a man in my bathroom, but for some reason it wasn't scary at this point. The next scene of the dream was me laying in my bed, just like I did when I had fallen asleep. But this time, there was a woman sitting on the end of my bed. She had long, dark hair. She wasn't particularly creepy looking. She just looked a little ill. The vibes that she sent off were not good at all. So in my dream, I just started to talk to her. I guess I wasn't really paralyzed at that point, or maybe I just didn't recognize what was happening. She was speaking in a friendly tone, but I remember thinking that I couldn't buy it. When I told her about the man I saw in my bathroom, she jumped at me quickly and sat on my chest. Somehow what I told her made her upset in a way. Her face was so close to mine. I started to panic, and that's when I consciously started to feel the paralysis. Out of my panic, I almost screamed at myself inside of my head to wake up. But of course, when I did become fully awake, there was no one there. However, when I did wake up, I was in the exact same position that I had been in my dream. By some coincidence, I read about this phenomenon called the night hag a long time after I had this dream, and I wondered if maybe that's what I saw. Either way, sleep paralysis is a nightmare. For backstory, I've always had sleep paralysis because of my irregular sleep schedule and the lack of sleep that makes me take a lot of naps. So, this day I took about 4 naps, and I would wake up because of my parents. At one time I was so exhausted that I just decided to go sleep in my bed. I woke up probably at 4 or 5 in the morning. For a little bit of context, the wall where my head was isn't very thin, and the other side of that wall contains part of a bathroom or bedroom of the neighbor next door. So my head was resting on my arms, and my arms were crossed. I thought I moved my head, but actually I didn't. And that's when I heard the doorbell and a baby crying. I thought, oh, I guess my neighbors have family visiting. I just supposed it was an adult carrying a child. I hear people talking and doors opening and closing. I'm listening to the sounds of the footsteps of an adult. They were walking back and forth, trying to calm the child. The first time they do this, it's the baby crying. And the second time, it got louder. The third time, it sounded like the baby was just in agony. The fourth time was the worst one. It was this sickening, deep, slow laugh, just like you hear in a horror movie. It scared the shit out of me. I don't know why, but I was convinced that that baby was going to kill me. I tried to move so I could run to my parents' room, but I couldn't. I was convinced that my leg was moving a little bit, but it was tingling. I still couldn't move it though. I was trying to move my body, but this tingling feeling spread all over, and that's when I saw the silhouette of a baby next to my bed. I was in a full panic. I just wanted to cry and run to my parents. I tried to calm myself down, talking to myself, saying, "Don't worry, it's just a baby. You're 12. You have enough strength to kick it." I laughed at that in my mind. I know it's pretty weird, but humor calms me down, and it made me feel braver than I had before. Eventually, the sleep paralysis stopped, and I walked into my parents' room where my dad asked me why I was there. Of course, I wasn't going to tell him that a demonic laughing baby kept me up, so I just answered with a simple, "I had a bad nightmare. Can I sleep with you?" He said yes, and we went back to sleep while I was laying down. I don't know if it was actual sleep paralysis or just a nightmare, because the sleep paralysis that I've had in the past didn't have any hallucinations that came with it. When I woke up hours later, I realized that I had just had my very first sleep paralysis experience with hallucinations. I was laying down, waiting to fall asleep, counting sheep, etc. I had been having chest pains, so I kept turning so I could get comfortable. Anyway, I snapped into sleep paralysis. I wasn't in my room anymore, and I could hear the morning noises that I could hear when I was awake. This lady with black fog gets in my face, almost like she was checking to make sure it was me. I closed my eyes immediately so that I didn't have to see her. She took me away to who knows where. I was still squeezing my eyes shut. Then I opened my eyes, and I'm in a gray, lit area. Usually my bed floats to these kinds of places, but this time it was only me and my blanket. I turned my head around so I could snap out of it, and then the scene returns to an image, which it's hard to explain. And now I can see that I'm in a whole different room. I tried to squirm around so I could wake up, but I ended up falling on the floor. It was like having sleep paralysis and being able to move. my limbs were still heavy and I didn't feel awake during any of it. I pinched myself, but it wasn't working, so I grabbed brushes, 2 bore and a synthetic, and just started brushing my face so I would wake up, but that didn't work either. So I looked around. There was an old mirror I used to have, a mirror that's always been in all of my sleep paralysis stories. It had a hook on it, and a cloak was hanging on it. And suddenly I heard voices, and they were whispering, "She's passing." And then, poof, I woke up from all of it. I have no idea what that was about. I remember my first experience with sleep paralysis very well, and it was terrifying. I know there are some people that don't believe in sleep paralysis, mostly because it hasn't happened to them. But it's 100% real, and it's not fun at all. The first time it happened to me, I was asleep with my boyfriend. I was snuggled up to him when I heard a loud noise. I'm not certain if it was him coughing or something else, but something loud woke me up regardless. Anyway, I felt wide awake and I tried to readjust, but that was when I realized I couldn't move my body at all. I tried my hardest to move my arms, my legs, my eyes, even open my eyes, but nothing budged. I felt a strange presence and I heard a woman's voice. I'm not sure what she was saying. I was freaking out and trying my best to move, but I just couldn't. I tried to make the slightest bit of noise and I still couldn't. I heard and felt this woman coming closer and closer, when finally I let out a very soft moan, and I kept trying harder and harder to scream. My eyes could barely open, then I still couldn't move my arms or legs. My boyfriend finally woke up to my moans and quickly shook me awake, thinking that I was having a nightmare. I started to panic as soon as I could move my body fully. I told him about it and he just held me, telling me it would be okay, and waited until I fell asleep before he did. Freakiest thing I've ever experienced. I haven't had sleep paralysis like that since. I'm so glad and lucky that my boyfriend was there. There's really no telling how much longer I would have been in that state, or what that woman wanted to do, or who she even was. I believe I was around 5 at the time. This was the most active paranormal time for me. I was asleep in my bed and I woke up for some unexplained reason. I was in the corner of my room, opposite my door. My eyes opened to my door being slightly open. I blink and it opens more. I blink again and in comes a little girl with a bowl haircut and some kind of odd dress on. She was a shadow figure. I continued to blink, and every time I did she would come closer and closer until she was about 3 feet away. At this point, I think she noticed that I was awake. She vanished, but in a very strange way. She left a void, like some type of portal-looking thing into space. There were 4 bright stars, a north, east, south, and west, but none of them were perfectly aligned. There were smaller, less bright stars deeper into the void. At the edge was a type of black flowing something. I don't know what it was. Like some fluid flowing on the rim of the void, pulsating. There was a sense of immense evil, and I knew that if she had reached me, something very bad would have happened. Maybe she would have taken me into that void with her. I fell back asleep, and I never saw her or the void ever again. I'm not sure if this was a ghost or if it was sleep paralysis, because I never actually tried to move. It was like the scenes in a war movie where the helicopter crashes and your eyes blink, showing you the aftermath. I wasn't conscious enough to try to move. I also don't have any family that could have been her. My sister was 12 at the time and way taller, and she never wore a bowl cut. And my mother is not 3 feet tall. I have no idea what this was, and I've been wondering about it for years. I don't know if it was a ghost, sleep paralysis, or maybe both. This happened when I was about 13 years old. I remember clearly my sister sleeping with me for some reason, but she was laying down on my left side. I was pretty tired that night, and I remember drifting away to sleep when, out of nowhere, it felt like someone was on my right side. So I opened my eyes. By instinct, it was like I was told to open them. As soon as I did, I saw a girl in front of me, just within feet of me. She looked to be maybe 10, no more than 12 years old. She was wearing a long white nightgown and had very long dark hair. She ran toward me and got on top of me, and I saw how her hands were covering my mouth. I was in total paralysis. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I remember trying so hard to get my sister to wake up. I remember yelling her name in my head, but the words wouldn't come out. Out of nowhere, my mom's cell phone rang, and I remember that got me out of the sleep paralysis. And at that point, I screamed for my mother so loud. I explained to her what happened, but she just shrugged it off and said I had a nightmare. I clearly remember not being asleep when this happened. So, I don't know if I had sleep paralysis or not. I remember this happening, but it feels like a half dream. So, the night before, I slept for about 14 hours. Then I couldn't really fall asleep the night following. I would toss and turn and wake up a few times, but nothing would happen. Unconsciously, I turned on my back, and that's how I fell asleep. Sooner or later, I woke up, but my eyes were closed. I felt this wave of electricity or something go through my head, and I immediately knew that something weird was going on. I suddenly realized that I couldn't move. I tried to get up or turn around, but I couldn't make the slightest move. I also tried to scream numerous times, but nothing came out. This happened for about a minute until I finally could move. I was totally shocked, and I wrapped myself up in the covers and slept on my stomach. I couldn't see anything, and I didn't hear anything either. I didn't feel anything on me. It was just this weird kind of aura or wave that went through or into my head. I don't know if this was just a dream or if it actually happened. I don't know if it was sleep paralysis or something else, but I've never had this type of thing happen before. Okay, so I had never had sleep paralysis before. I'm 29 now, and recently I started praying to Santa Muerte, maybe about 4 months ago. The past 2 months, I started praying more heavily and putting more into it. The first month that I was more in tune with it, I didn't have my bedroom set. We had just moved into a brand new apartment, and my family was the first to live there. Anyways, I was asleep on the floor, and it felt like someone was crawling very fast into my room and laying next to me. It kind of freaked me out. Freaked me out so much that I was scared to open my eyes, so I just laid there, convincing myself it was one of my kids laying with me. I finally opened my eyes, and no one was there. I never told anyone because it just sounds crazy. I know she's not evil, and I know if it was her that I'm just not used to that kind of stuff, so I freaked out a little bit. Ever since then, I couldn't feel her anymore, so I thought she backed away since she saw that I was scared. Well, it happened again, but way more intense. This time I had my bed set and I was going to sleep, and I heard two people crawling into my room. I woke up and said out loud, "Oh hell no, not tonight." I turned around, and as soon as I closed my eyes, I saw Santa Muerte, the statue that I had, and someone cutting off her head. And then my daughter grabbing a skeleton head that looked very scary and saying, "It's okay, we can just use this one." As soon as she put it on Santa Muerte's body, I heard the loudest screech I had ever heard in my life. I opened my eyes so wide, I was still hearing it in my head. I was shaking so much that even my vision was shaking. Everything was blurry. This whole time this was happening, two black figures were standing by my bed, but my vision was so blurry from the screaming and the shaking that I couldn't tell what it was. While all this was going on, my eyes were wide open and my body was stiff, so I couldn't move. All I felt was fear while all this was happening, and although it felt like forever, it was a good 8 to 10 seconds. As soon as I was able to blink, everything went away. I felt relieved, and no fear at all, and was able to move. I don't know what this was, and I can't explain it. I did recently find out that going vegan helps you be more in tune with the spirit world, which I thought was crazy because I went vegan 3 weeks ago. I don't know, I haven't told anybody because this all just sounds so freaking crazy, but does anybody have any idea what I witnessed? I always was told that Santa Muerte wasn't evil, so I almost feel like it wasn't her, but whatever it was, I hope I don't run into it again. Last weekend, I had the same dream on both Saturday and Sunday night. I have had an attachment in the past, so I know what it feels like to be in the presence of a negative entity. During the dream, I encountered that same negative feeling and was able to fight back or hold off that feeling with my own energy. It was really terrifying to confront this negative entity head on in the dream because in real life I always run from it. Toward the end of this nightmare, I started hearing my bedroom door rattle and shake, like someone was outside trying desperately to get in. After a while, I became fully aware of what was going on around me. I just couldn't wake up. I couldn't move, but someone was still messing with the door, like they couldn't quite figure out how a knob worked. I ended up drifting off to sleep, and when I finally woke up, my bedroom door was open. Sunday night, I made sure to latch the door all the way. I had the exact same dream, and the same sleep paralysis experience, and when I wake up, again, my door is open. My grandma recently passed, and my mom brought her ashes here, but removed them from the house shortly after because weird stuff started happening, along with a foul, sulfury smell that moved through the house. She has thoroughly cleansed the house with sage, black salt, and obsidian. I think whatever she cast out was trying to get back in. So I'm half asleep in bed and just kind of waking up, and I'm just thinking about random stuff, right? So I start thinking, do I believe in ghosts? Then I remember thinking, hey, I've never seen or experienced anything out of the sort. Literally, as I thought this, I heard a sound in my ears, like what happens when you stretch. You know, the weird static sound of probably blood rushing through your head or something, and everything tenses up. I'm awake, but I still can't and don't want to open my eyes, because people always say that if you do, you'll see demons and stuff. It kind of spread from my head down, and I was just thinking, oh shit, this must be sleep paralysis. I guess I pissed off whatever by saying I had no proof of paranormal activities. I just tried to move my arms and I actually couldn't. Like I couldn't tell them to move. I kind of started panicking because I didn't want to get stuck like that for a long time, and it felt like it was spreading down my legs, so I kind of moved my foot back and forth, and suddenly I can control everything again. Scariest shit ever. I've had sleep paralysis once, years ago, when I was a preteen. I'm 26 today, and just a few days ago I had sleep paralysis again. My boyfriend leaves for work earlier than I do, so usually he comes around to my side of the bed to wake me up and kiss me goodbye. Most of the time I hear the sound of his walking with socks and his long pants dragging on the carpet. On this particular day, he walked over to my side and kissed me goodbye. I remember hearing him leave and shut the door, and then him coming back in again. I later asked him about this, and he confirmed that he did come back in. Then I heard the door shut again. The next thing I know, I am awake because I just heard him leave, but I can't move. It's like I hear some presence walking, like how he does, around the bed, back and forth, back and forth. I clearly hear the carpet shuffling, so I can definitely tell that there's something there just pacing back and forth. In my mind, I start to feel scared, and I kept wishing that it was actually him and that he'll just wake me up from all of this. It felt like maybe 5 minutes went by, and I attempted to wake myself up. I just kept telling myself in my head, "Wake up, wake up." I can hear those words in my head, but it's not my voice, and there's a struggle to move my lips. I can finally move, and I look around the room. I pray for protection and get up and get ready for work with all the lights on and the doors open. I was extra scared being in the bathroom looking at the mirror. Not sure what to think of this. It felt like a male presence. I'm also not sure if this relates, but a few weeks ago my sister's baby was born, so my boyfriend and I went to visit. We had slept at my sister's apartment the previous night, so we went back to grab our stuff and go home. We sat on the couches for a bit and relaxed before the long drive home, and we both heard distinct knocks. My boyfriend says that he counted 5 or 6, while I only heard 3 to 4. We thought maybe it was the neighbors knocking on the fridge or making some sort of noise in the cupboard, but it didn't sound like fridge or cupboard noises. It sounded like solid, distinct knocks on a wooden door. We hesitated for a moment and decided to stay, but ended up leaving right away. I didn't want to tell my sister, but we ended up talking the other day, and she told me some experiences that she had had as well in that apartment. Maybe I brought something home with me. The glitching girl would be my most terrifying experience with sleep paralysis. This experience happened late in 2017, which was perhaps the most stressful year of my life. It was packed with late nights and more than 5 cups of coffee. This sleep paralysis episode started how it usually does for me. White noise and the tingling sensation creeping over my entire skin. I'm used to the experience of sleep paralysis, and I'm usually curious to see if the man in the white coat, aka Knox, who is my usual sleep paralysis companion, would show up. I decided to open my eyes. Wrong choice. The moment my eyes open, my sleep paralysis suddenly intensifies. The vibrations suddenly got stronger and more intense. The white noise felt deafening and painful. I could barely breathe at all. It was as if somebody was strangling me. While this was all happening, I could hear a disembodied voice echoing in the darkness that kept repeating, "Play with me." I tried calming myself down, since fear only serves to intensify the already intense episode I was experiencing. I took deep, slow breaths and would alternate between breathing and trying to bite my tongue or move my toes, since that usually snaps me out of sleep paralysis. That did not happen. Instead, while I was able to move certain parts of my body, I still couldn't wake up. Now, that wouldn't have been too terrifying if it wasn't for the appearance of a child with bulging eyes and sickly thin body crawling its way up my body. She would glitch and her appearance would distort for a moment and then piece itself back together. Her words spooked me the most. She knew I was trying to wake myself up and failing miserably at it. So she starts to taunt me. She's saying, "You'll never wake up, so you'll have to play with me forever." And then she said, "It looks like he's coming for you soon." She would disappear and reappear at random, saying the same thing over and over again, while glitching as she did so. This particular sleep paralysis episode felt like it lasted forever. I was so close to crying in fear that I thought I was actually going to die in my dream. I hope I never see the glitching girl again. My scariest sleep paralysis story was once when I woke up, unable to move. I'd had sleep paralysis a few times before, but this was the first time I had hallucinated. My eyes darted to a spot in the corner of my room that had a darker outline than the rest of the already dark room. And then I saw it. It was a humanoid figure with bright yellow eyes that opened and stared at me. The eyes didn't have a black iris, or pupil, or anything. It was just all yellow. I realized that the figure looked like it had been drawn by a child, like it was scribbled, with some black lines being shot out of the figure. It slowly walked into the center of my room, and I heard its footsteps as it traversed my room. We then made eye contact for what seemed like hours. I eventually woke up and the figure disappeared. But that is the most frightening thing I've ever encountered during sleep paralysis. I get sleep paralysis on a regular basis, probably at least once every other day, but generally multiple times a day if I nap or wake up early. I'm usually able to just snap myself out of it, but at this point, it's almost like I try to have fun with it. That was up until a few weeks ago, when I woke up and checked my phone. Everything went really blurry and I fell back into bed, and then I got sleep paralysis while I was awake. It was kind of a cool feeling and I wish I could do it again, but I don't know what would happen if it lasted longer.